Welcome back to the Dynasty Daddy YouTube channel. Today we're taking a look at 4 players that are trending and why I think they're personally sells. The offseason is all about taking advantage of those small windows as news is drop fed to us. So don't get caught asleep at the wheel and try to see if there's a market for these players in your league. Let's jump into it. First, we got Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets tied to Justin Fields. So a lot of people like it, a lot of people don't like it. Let's dive into it. So currently he's 24 going on 25. Last year, if we take a look at his stats, he had 201 fantasy points, 154 targets, 101 receptions, 1,100 receiving yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns. A pretty solid stat line. There was some weeks where he was hyper-targeted with Aaron Rodgers, but again, Devontae Adams was in there, and there was a lot going on. It was a busy season, to say the least, for the Jets, and a disappointing one. But the interesting thing here is there's 2 narratives. After Justin Fields signed his contract with the Jets, I've been hearing, oh, this is great. Just look at DJ Moore. Just look at these players that Justin Fields hyper targets, first read type players like a DJ Moore. That's going to be great for Garrett Wilson. We're actually going to see those wide receiver 1 numbers that everyone's been telling me that exist for Garrett Wilson. And then I've also heard, oh, Garrett Wilson, like he's just an overvalued wide receiver 2, a la Olave, Waddle. We need to kind of pump the brakes on the Garrett Wilson hype, especially with Justin Fields behind the helm. The past wide receiver 1s with Fields playing, we'll look back at the 4 seasons. We had George Pickens last year. It was a half year, but he finished wide receiver 42. DJ Moore finished wide receiver 6, which everyone's hyping up, but he did have those massive weeks where he scored like 3 or 4 touchdowns. There is some massive spike weeks. It wasn't as consistent. And then we had Mooney as wide receiver 74 and Mooney as wide receiver 23. I think realistically, if we look at this, Garrett Wilson's probably going to do what he does every year, which is put up decent stats, but I don't expect him to be someone that I can consistently lock in as a wide receiver 6 like DJ Moore was at 1 year. If we take a look at Garrett Wilson's value, it's maintained basically the same value. While there's a lot of noise about him, he still holds high value in a lot of dynasty players' hearts. And that means to me, I'm probably going to take a look at what can I get for him just to get off the risk of, is this guy actually just a Waddle? Is he just someone that I don't want to ride the ride anymore? Because once he starts getting to that 25, 26, people are going to start treating him more like a DJ Moore value-wise than this young ascending asset, which we haven't seen after 3 years. So let's take a look at some trades. So first up, we got Garrett Wilson, Justin Fields. You trade the whole Jets offense for Brian Thomas in a 10-team start 9. Give me the best player. Brian Thomas Jr. put up a season better than Garrett Wilson has, and that was his rookie year. So I'm certainly going to smash the Brian Thomas side. Let me re-roll on that young, high upside wide receiver. That's exactly what I want. Here's another example. I typically don't like to do 1-for-1s. I need to kind of either consolidate or something like that, but give me Nico Collins straight up for Garrett Wilson. Nico Collins, we saw pre-injury with Stroud. He was a top 6 wide receiver for most of the year. Give me that. I think Nico Collins in general is pretty depressed value-wise. Lastly, we got Chris Godwin in a first for Garrett Wilson. This is a great option as well. Take that young player, split him into a future pick that you can just kind of bank, and then get an older player that still will probably give you similar production. Chris Godwin was a wide receiver 1 until he got injured. I'm not saying he's going to just hit the ground running and be the exact same player, but he's certainly a player that should be able to make an impact pretty quickly. And then you can also look at someone like, like a Devontae Adams, a Tyreek Hill. There's a lot of players out there that fit the Godwin role. Being able to get a first and like an old vet, that's going to probably give you similar production, especially solid. If we take a look at the draft board, he's currently sitting in the 3rd round. Around players I'd much rather have. An A.J. Brown, an A-Chain, Breece Hall, T. Higgins. Those players for certain I would rather have. I mean, if you're desperate for quarterback, Kyler Murray. There's a lot of players in that range I'd much rather have than Garrett Wilson, which we kind of know what he is. Do I think Garrett Wilson sucks? No. But I do think at his current value, you still have an off-ramp to gain significant value. Whether that is consolidating up to get a younger asset and basically just re-rolling on the Garrett Wilson hype, or tearing down, pick up an old vet that's going to produce basically the same, and pick up that future first. It gives you that flexibility. Next up, Tyrone Tracy. Here's the kicker, right? He comes in, looks good on a very talentless Giants team. All the New York teams have players we need to talk about. The issue is this man's about to be 26 and he's a running back. The second you realize that, we got to kind of pump the brakes on where this dude is going, because outside of Derrick Henry, I don't think there's any running back that's going to have 4 years of success past 26. So last year he had 163 fantasy points as a rookie, 192 attempts, 839 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, and 284 receiving yards. Again, solid player. I do think realistically what's going to happen is they're going to bring in someone else. Singletary really wasn't a long-term fit. They're probably going to bring in someone else. I think he could be a solid complimentary back, but I don't see him as being someone that I want to hold and feel confident that he's going to be, I can set and forget him going forward. If we take a look at his value, I do think his value in the past month has gone down. Not super significant, but I do think people are starting to realize, wait a minute, this draft is loaded with running backs, and this dude is almost 26. Probably not a long-term piece, more of just a let's flash in a pan. It's nice that we got some value for a year or two out of him. Let's not get ahead of ourselves that this player is someone that is the answer for the Giants, because typically the Giants are wrong when they say they have an answer. Let's take a look at some trades. So first we got Tyrone Tracy in the 202 for Jonathan Taylor in the 311. I mean, this trade, I had to do a spit take when I saw it, but in general, I don't think you're going to get a Jonathan Taylor-like player, but can I take an early second Tyrone Tracy and get a player that's locked in? That's an amazing deal, especially you get a third back. You still pick up some draft capital, but in general, like tearing up, take a second, take a third with Tracy, try to find a player that you can get value. Here's another one. Trade Tyrone Tracy for an early second. Yes. Okay. Smash it. Just take it. You made some profit. Now I don't have to worry about that. Another great trade here. And this is similar to the Jonathan Taylor trade. I think this one's more realistic. Tyrone Tracy into 208 for Josh Jacobs, especially in a deep league like this. I think you could pull something off in a 12-team start 11. But if we look at it, you pick up a solid top 12 running back, let them take the risk on that player, and you give up a late second, which I'm not going to miss sleep over. If we take a look at his draft placement currently, he's a 9th round pick. But I mean, if we look at this, there's players around him, again, I would rather take. Davante Adams, one spot before. Alvin Kamara, Jennings. There's players that I would just feel more confident in around this range than saying, oh yes, this 25, 26-year-old running back, I want to ride out. I think the big thing to take away is Tyrone Tracy, again, doesn't suck, but he doesn't have this long runway of like Bucky Irving type upside from a value perspective. So if I can cash out now, get me a guaranteed production elsewhere, I'm going to do that. Just let me get out with the value, because oftentimes people don't want to buy players, and if you can sell Tyrone Tracy while he still has, he's in his second year type of hype, it's a great time to get out. Now we're talking week 1 legend from last year, Jordan Mason. He just signed with the Minnesota Vikings, everyone's favorite landing spot. Last year, he had 109 fantasy points, 153 rushing attempts, 789 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and 91 receiving yards. Obviously, the Vikings re-signed Aaron Jones, then traded for Jordan Mason. If we take a look at his value jumped significantly. It is probably because, yes, you're not behind Christian McCaffrey anymore, but you're still behind Aaron Jones. This is the issue I have with people that want to ride the Jordan Mason train. Jordan Mason is just any RB that is one injury away from starting. I'm not sitting here thinking that he's some hyper efficient back. He only had 3 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, that could improve next year, but in general, he doesn't have a receiving upside, only 91 receiving yards, especially with Aaron Jones there, who's going to take a lot of that receiving work. This is just any backup running back. But the fact that you can get potentially a second for him, now's the time that if you have those Jordan Mason shares, it's time to move or at least see what's out there. I'm not saying he doesn't fit a role on your roster. I'm not saying any of that. But if there's a window that you can sell and take some of that value, I'm going to try to do that. So let's take a look at a couple trades. First up, we got Jordan Mason for a 207. Give me that. Give me the value. I can trade that pick. I can use it elsewhere. I can also make that pick. Any running back, honestly, that you get in the second round is probably going to be as good or potentially have higher upside than a Jordan Mason, who has been traded, stuck behind Aaron Jones. I'm not too excited about his upside. Now here's another one. Here's a great example of take all my trash, give me someone that has some sort of production. Coleman, Mason, Tillman, give me Tyreek Hill. I think almost anyone would do that. I do see it's a 14-team start 8, so it's a little bit deeper. Still, catch me on the Tyreek Hill side. Lastly, these are the deals I think are some of my favorite to make. It's these second, third, second type of deals. Have the hype of Jordan Mason into 205. Let me just bump back a little bit in the draft, especially in the 8-team, right? You're moving back like 8 spots. So move back a little bit in the draft, pick up a Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard's probably locked into at least a role. Even if they bring in someone else, he's still going to have a significant role. It's Tony Pollard. That's a much better player than Jordan Mason. And you still get a pick back. Can I take Jordan Mason and get a player that has a better range of outcomes? Let's take a look at the draft board. Currently, he's going in the 12th round, but there's still players around him that I'd much rather have. He's going ahead of a DeAndre Swift, which is crazy. Tony Pollard, even someone like a Rashad White, I would much rather have as a running back. There's the Milroe upside. Like, there's players out there that I'd much rather take a shot on than a Jordan Mason. I'm not saying he doesn't fit a role, but to me, he is a backup running back that has gotten a value bump just because he's not behind Christian McCaffrey anymore. This is one that I'm definitely putting out feelers, seeing what's out there in my league. Will anyone cash me out? Otherwise, I feel still fine if he's on my roster, but if I can use him to tier up or pick up a different player and pick up additional value, I'm definitely looking for that. Lastly, we got the hero himself, Evan Engram. This signing is one that's hard for me to absolutely tell you it sucks, because honestly, as an Evan Engram truther for a long time, landing in a spot with limited target earners, like Sutton's there and then basically no one else, it's an amazing spot for him. So let's take a look at his value. Pretty significant jump after the signing, which is great. If we look at his production last year, disclaimer, he was injured for a decent amount of the season. He had 66 fantasy points, 64 targets, 47 receptions, 365 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Again, Evan Engram has been kind of a cheat code for me personally for the longest time. I would always be like, okay, do I get the flashy tight end that everyone wants, or do I just get the Evan Engram that's going to get 100 targets and no one's going to talk about him? That being said, if I'm not in a tight end premium league or a low tight end premium, let me cash out, especially at his age and his injury history. It might be time for him to go off into the sunset, and this might be the last chopper that you can get. Let's take a look at a few trades. Right, Evan Engram for the 205. Again, can I cash out? That's an amazing deal, in my opinion. I don't think Evan Engram is washed, but I also don't think he has high-end tight end upside that he used to have. If we take a look at this other trade, Deontay Johnson, who's basically garbage right now, and the 110 for Evan Engram, Kareem Hunt, and Sutton, and 12-team start 9. Again, I think this is an amazing deal. Can I use him to get some credit for? The reality is, most leagues, Evan Engram isn't worth anything, but now can I get some credit for him? He's going to the Broncos. If we take a look at the draft board, late 11th round pick, but there's a lot of players around him I'd much rather have. And 2, you got to look at the other available tight ends that go around him. 2 rounds later, Jonnu Smith, Cole Kmet, Jake Ferguson, Pat Freiermuth. There's no reason for me to be paying an 11th round pick on Evan Engram when I can get all these other guys for a 13th round pick. And frankly, I'm much higher on like a Jonnu Smith than an Evan Engram going into next year. This is a value bump. Take advantage of it, because Evan Engram, while he won't be useless, I don't think he has many more value bumps like this ahead of him in his dynasty career. And that sums it all up. If you made it this far, then you got to do the YouTube things. You know, you got to like, comment, subscribe, support the channel. We are about to hit 1,000 subs. And also, if you are playing in dynasty leagues, definitely check out our Discord and our weekly live streams where we'll answer your trade questions. Until next time, I don't have an outro slogan, but until next time.